They buried my mother's secret, but it rose when I returned. They buried my mother's secret under stone, silence, and fear. But the night I returned, the ground trembled and her secret trembled with it. Some curses die, some sleep, and some wait for their rightful heir. So, before we continue, click on the subscribe button. My name is Arwen Solace, and the people of Bramfall believe I should have stayed gone, buried somewhere far beyond the cliffs that swallowed my childhood. When I stepped back into the town square, the first thing I saw was a carved wooden display of my mother's face, hanging like a warning. Witch, betrayer, unnamed. The words scratched beneath it twisted my stomach in a way I'd forgotten, but the whispers cut deeper. There she is. The cursed girl. She came back to finish what her mother started. I kept walking, pretending the weight of their stares didn't press against my ribs. But everything inside me coiled tight, anger, fear, and something else, something humming low in my blood, like a distant chord. I told myself I'd returned only for answers, nothing more. But as I approached my mother's unmarked grave, the soil shifted, just slightly, but enough to make me freeze. A cold current swept beneath my feet as if something beneath the earth recognized me. Then, the ground whispered my name. At first, I thought grief was playing tricks, but the whisper came again, soft, strained, familiar. Arwen. I stumbled back, breath sharp, heart pounding. Because my mother had been dead for 10 years. And yet her voice was rising. I knelt beside the grave, fingers trembling as I brushed away the cold soil. Nothing about the mound looked disturbed, yet the whisper lingered, thin as breath on glass. I wanted to run. Instead, I forced myself to listen. The closer I leaned, the more certain I became. That voice wasn't a memory, it was calling. Before I could speak, a sharp voice snapped behind me. Step away from there, girl. Magistrate Haldren, the man who'd declared my mother dangerous. The man who'd ordered her burial without rites. His gaze pinned me like a stray animal brought back to its cage. You shouldn't be here, he said. Nothing good comes from stirring the past. I stood slowly. Then why does the past keep speaking? His expression flickered, fear or recognition I couldn't tell, but he masked it quickly. Your mother left nothing behind, no legacy, no truth worth digging up. But he was wrong. Because the moment he stepped between me and the grave, something beneath the earth pulsed, like a heartbeat syncing with my own. The whisper sharpened, curling into a single, unmistakable warning. He lies. My breath caught. Haldren stepped back, startled, meaning he heard something too. Which meant one thing. They hadn't buried my mother's secret to protect the town. They buried it to protect themselves. And it was starting to rise. I returned to my childhood home, an abandoned stone cottage at the cliff's edge. The door hung crooked, half-rotten, as if the house had exhaled its final breath years ago. But the moment I stepped inside, the air changed. Warmer, watchful. My mother's things were gone, stripped clean by the council long ago. But one object remained, something they must have overlooked. A small wooden chest carved with spiraling lines I didn't recognize. The patterns shifted subtly as if reacting to my presence. My pulse stuttered. I touched the lid. A shock, cold, electric shot up my arm. The chest snapped open by itself. Inside lay a single object. A dark, root-like stone spiraled around a silver thread. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trying to wake. The Threnody root. A relic spoken of only in half-whispered tales, something that could shape memory, reveal truth, or unravel lies. Something that chose its bearer by blood alone. I shouldn't have touched it, but it leaned toward me, the way flame bends toward air. The moment my fingers brushed it, the cottage walls shuddered. Shadows snapped to attention, and the root's pulse aligned perfectly, terrifyingly, with mine. Then, in a rush of breath, "Daughter, take it." My mother's voice, alive inside the stone. And someone outside the cottage heard it too, because footsteps began rushing toward my door. The footsteps hammered closer, multiple, urgent, disciplined. Not townspeople, enforcers. which meant Haldren had followed me or worse, expected this. I snatched the root and tucked it beneath my cloak, just as the door burst open. 3 cloaked figures stormed inside, masks carved like hollowed skulls. Their leader's voice cut through the dust. "Search the cottage. The relic has awakened." They didn't see me at first. Shadows wrapped around me like a shield, responding to the root's presence. Not protecting me, claiming me. One of the masked men stepped inches from where I stood hidden in plain sight. "Do you feel that? The air is close." My blood chilled. Air? So they knew. The root pulsed once hard. A faint ripple shot across the floor, slamming into their boots. The men staggered, trying to regain balance. "What was that?" one hissed. The leader stiffened. "She's here." The shadows dropped me, exposing me. I ran. The men lunged, but the cottage itself seemed to tilt, pulling them off course. I bolted through the back door, heart pounding, sprinting into the fog-covered cliffs. Behind me, the leader shouted, "Find her before the root bonds fully." Bond, to me. I didn't understand, yet all I knew was this. Once the root chose an heir, nothing, not the council, not the hunters, could stop what was coming. And it had chosen me. I ran until the cliffs blurred into a sheet of rain and mist. Bramfall's lamps became smeared moons, and the hunters' shouts dissolved into the gulls' cries. The root thudded under my ribs, steady as a drum, and every time I slowed to listen, it nudged me toward the one place my mother had once loved, the tide-washed ruins at the cliff's base. There I found a figure waiting beneath a collapsed arch, small, wrapped in sea-stained wool, eyes like coals struck for sparks. She did not rise when I approached. She only smiled as if she'd been expecting me. "You are late," she said. Her voice was a matchbox struck, and yet right on time. Her name was Nayla Ver. She called herself an archivist of forgotten songs. The village called her a madwoman who traded in memories. Up close, I recognized something in her face, an old kindness that had once belonged to my mother. Nayla said my mother had saved her, fed her, taught her to read things that no one else could. "She never died by chance," Nayla said. "They buried her to bury the ledger. The ledger names those who traded memory for coins." I told Nayla about Haldren's arrival at the grave, about the hunters. She only nodded and unrolled a scrap of brittle vellum from beneath her cloak, half a map, half a list. A ritual was being prepared, a public binding. They planned to make the root a town instrument. "You must not let them," she whispered. "But take care, those who seek the root will not bargain, they'll steal or kill." As the waves clawed at the stones below, I realized 2 things. I had allies, and I had enemies who would do anything. The root thrummed, impatient. Nayla Quote's hand found mine and squeezed. "Tonight," she said, "we steal the ledger from under their noses." My mouth went dry. "Because the ledger," she said, "was kept inside Haldren Quote's manor." Haldren Quote's manor sat on the highest ridge, an ivory wound against the storm-smeared sky. Torchlight bloomed in its windows like watchful eyes. Nayla and I skirted along service paths, bellies low and breaths held. The root pressed at my side like a compass needle. Every step closer, it sang louder. The servants' corridor smelled of wax and old secrets. We slipped past sleeping dogs and a gardener who snored through a boot of tobacco smoke. In the archive, ledgers slept in iron-bound chests. Haldren loved paper because it was stable and obedient, unlike memory. We found the ledger wrapped in oilskin beneath a stack of marriage records. When I unrolled it, the ink seemed fresh, black as still water. My fingers trembled and the root hummed, angry and hungry. Names scrawled down the page, neat and cold. My mother's hand, spidery and furious, had written an accusation. "Haldren, Miriath Cowell, and the Conquered." Then the ink shifted. The letters bled and rearranged into a sentence I did not expect. "We offered her a bargain. She agreed." I slammed the ledger closed. Nayla hissed. "The root resists straightforward reading. They've salted the book with legal lies. We need context, proof beyond the pages." She pulled from her sleeve a small tin. Inside, a curled ribbon of hair bound with a silver thread and a note. not taken willingly. Footsteps pounded the hall, the manor guards. Someone had raised the alarm. We slipped the ledger into Nayla pack and melted into shadow, but at the corridor's bend, a figure blocked our escape. A lantern glinted on polished boots. Haldren steward, eyes wide with fury. Nayla smiled, calm as sea ice. "We're only here for memories that don't belong to you," she said. The steward's hand went for the bell. We ran. We escaped through a service hatch onto a roof of slate and wind. My lungs burned as if I'd been holding my breath for years. Nayla pack thudded against her spine, the ledger secure. We slid down a tangle of ropes to the shoreline and hid in a narrow grotto until the manor's horns faded into the rain. When at last we dared to open the ledger again, the ink irradiated against the candlelight. The pages vibrated. As I looked, the root thrummed and my mind did a thing I hadn't expected. It offered a memory that was not mine, a flicker of my mother in Haldren chamber, signing a parchment with an expression like surrender. My chest constricted. The root's voice threaded through the memory, soft and slotted into my bones. She did not choose freely. I pulled back, nauseous. Memory, I realized, could be coerced. The root's gift had been used as a chain. Haldren and his allies had bound my mother with a false bargain, then erased the coercion. Nayla's fingers traced the ledger. They made her name a commodity, but they could not teach her how to be silent in the way that binds memory. She left us a token, proof she did not bargain willingly. She unwrapped the silver-threaded ribbon. The hair inside sang faintly like a bell heard through a wall. The root recognized it. The grotto breathed. I felt a tug deep in my throat, part grief, part hunger. Then a heavy boot slammed on the stone above us. A voice called out, low and flat. "You thought the tide would hide you, child." Nayla's face went ashen. We had been found. They dragged us from the grotto into a torchlit courtyard. Haldren stood in the center like a watchtower of flesh, calm, precise, his face carved into the shape of law. At his side was a woman in silver lace, whose name Nayla spat with venom, Miriath Cowell, a patron of births, marriages, and convenient amnesia. "You meddle where you have no claim," Haldren said, voice smooth as old cloth. His eyes flicked to the root at my throat and narrowed. "You chose the wrong heir," Miriath smiled, too bright. "The root answers pedigree and proof. You brought theft, bagged yourselves with no proof." Nayla laughed, sharp and unhinged. "The proof is not the ledger alone. It's in the old cavern beneath the hawthorn, the place where your laws were born. Bring her." They meant the cavern to be a cell. They brought ropes instead. But when they lowered me into the cold mouth of that stone, the root sang like a struck bell. Water dripped in the dark. A low, ancestral hum wrapped the walls. The cavern smelled of salt and old words. The moment my boots hit the cavern floor, the root stretched its roots into the stone. Visions peeled open. My mother kneeling before a circle of men, a bargain forced beneath a child's cry. Then another image, Haldren's hand at my mother's throat, a hidden symbol pressed to her skin. I rose from the vision gasping. The truth was a blade and a balm, both. Someone stepped out of the shadow by the cavern mouth, Haldren himself, blade drawn, a smile like judgment. "You should have stayed buried," he said. The root pulsed. My hands found the stone at my side, steady as a heart. I smiled back. "Wrong town, magistrate." I dug myself up. Haldren advanced slowly, blade glinting with ceremonial etchings, symbols of law, though I knew now the law in Bramfall was simply whatever lie he could carve deep enough. The root thrummed violently against my chest. My pulse matched it beat for beat. "You were never meant to inherit," Haldren said. "Your mother's line died with her. You are only an inconvenience." But the cavern disagreed. A tremor rippled through the stone, soft at first, then rising like breath beneath the earth. Dust fell from the ceiling. The water at my feet vibrated in concentric rings. Haldren froze. I stepped forward. The cavern knows who belongs here. From the walls, faint lights blinked awake, small runic glyphs hidden under centuries of soot. They ignited in sequence, forming an old sigil I had never seen, yet felt intimately. The veilbearer mark. My mother's legacy. Haldren tried to hide the panic in his voice. That mark was extinguished. No, I whispered. You extinguished her, but the root remembers. The cavern rumbled again, stronger this time. Haldren lost footing and dropped his blade. It skittered across the stone toward me. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. The root pulsed and the sigil flared. A beam of cold light shot upward, piercing the cavern roof. Haldren stared at me, horror blooming. You've awakened the vault, he breathed. I didn't know what that meant. But the root did. It pulled me toward the light. The light swallowed me whole, cold, weightless, until I landed on smooth obsidian ground inside a vast chamber humming with layered whispers. Ghost-like echoes of old memories spiraled above me, weaving through archways carved with the same sigil from the cavern. The Vault of Threnodies, a place whispered only in myths, a reservoir of unaltered memory, the true seat of the root. I stepped forward cautiously. The ground vibrated beneath each footfall as though testing my intent. Then the whispers coalesced into a voice, my mother's voice, clearer than any echo before. Arwen, you must listen. My throat tightened. Mother. Her figure flickered into a silhouette of silver smoke. She raised a spectral hand toward the vault's center, where a pedestal held a mask made of intertwined roots and bone. They used my name. They stole lives to feed their rule, but the root cannot be wielded by thieves. The mask pulsed toward me. You must choose. As I reached for it, the chamber darkened. A second voice split the air, deep, jagged, furious. You don't belong here, girl. I spun. Miriath Cowles stood at the entrance of the vault, cloak snapping like a predator's wings. She was alone, which meant she had come without Haldren. She smiled sharply. I'm here to claim what your mother denied us. The chamber convulsed. The root in my chest surged. The choice was about to be made. Miriath circled me like a vulture, her bracelets chiming softly, each one etched with memory-binding runes. Your mother was a sentimental fool, she hissed. She thought the truth should be free. Truth is a currency. And you, her gaze swept me with disdain, are an accident. The vault reacted to her venom. Shadows recoiled. The mask on the pedestal pulsed quicker. My mother's voice whispered urgently in my ear. Do not touch it with fear. The root answers only to strength. Miriath lunged first. She grabbed the mask and screamed. The vault rejected her instantly. Her skin blistered, her veins rising like blackened vines. She fell backward, gasping. I didn't move to help her. The mask turned toward me of its own will. A sharp, slicing wind spiraled around the pedestal. I stepped forward, heart racing. My mother's silhouette reappeared, softer now, fatting. Your inheritance was sealed, not destroyed. Take it, Arwen, and see. I touched the mask. A cold shock tore through my spine. Images flooded me. My mother's final night, the forced bargain, the erased memories, the lies sewn into Bramfall's history. Then visions beyond her death. A map of secrets, every wound Bramfall had hidden. When the vision ceased, the mask dissolved into ash. But something new coiled around my mind, a fully awakened root. Miriath staggered to her feet, horrified. What are you now? She whispered. I smiled slowly. Something you can't bind. The vault dimmed until only a faint silver hum remained. The root settled inside me, not as an artifact, but as a second heartbeat. My senses sharpened. The chamber's whispers shifted from chaos to clarity. Every false memory in Bramfall glowed like a fracture line. Every hidden truth gleamed like silver in water. Miriath scrambled backward, her once perfect composure shattered. You were never meant to survive the awakening. The root kills imposters. I stepped toward her calm, and yet here I stand. She spat blood. Haldren won't allow you to keep it. Haldren can't take what he never understood. The vault's entrance cracked open behind her. The cavern beyond echoed with approaching footsteps, multiple, heavy, urgent, reinforcements. Miriath laughed breathlessly. You'll be hunted, cornered, forced into the ritual they've been building. No, I said. I'll force them into the truth. Before she could retort, the root surged, triggered by a memory flickering near the chamber wall. I reached out, brushing the stone. A hidden doorway opened. Inside was a scroll sealed with my mother's signet. My hands trembled as I lifted it. A single line glowed through the wrapping. The air decides the fate of Bramfall. Boots thundered at the vault entrance. The reinforcements had arrived, swords drawn, torches blazing. Miriath pointed at me, snarling, "There, take her." I backed toward the hidden passage, scroll clutched tight. The root whispered, "Run now, the reckoning comes later." And I obeyed. The hidden passage curved like the inside of a serpent's ribcage. I moved quickly, torch in one hand, scroll in the other, the root pulsing guidance through my pulse. Behind me, shouts echoed, distant but closing. Once I surfaced through a cracked stone grate near the lower cliff, I finally unwrapped the scroll. My mother's handwriting swept across the page, fierce, uncompromising. "Arwen, if you are reading this, the root has chosen. There are 3 truths you must know, one about me, one about Bramfall, one about yourself." My throat tightened. Truth 1, she had never betrayed Bramfall. Bramfall betrayed her. The conquered needed someone to blame for memory fractures they themselves caused. They sacrificed her to preserve their power. Truth 2, the town fed the root with stolen memories. They harvested recollections from the vulnerable orphans, the poor, the ill, and rewrote them to maintain loyalty. Truth 3, I was born with a forbidden resonance, double-sided, able to see both original memory and altered memory. A gift, a threat, a reason to erase me. My knees went weak. The power humming inside me wasn't new. It had always been awake, just suppressed. The scroll's final line burned into my lungs. "When you return, the root will rise, and Bramfall will face the truth it buried." Footsteps broke the silence. I spun, just as Nayla emerged from the fog. But her expression wasn't a relief. It was dreadful. Nayla stepped closer, rain streaking down her cheeks. "They know your awakening triggered the vault," she whispered. "Haldren has called for the binding rite at dawn." My stomach dropped. The binding rite, what they once tried to force on my mother. A ritual to strip the root from its rightful heir and bind it under law. "I won't let them cage it," I said. But Nayla's silence chilled me more than the rain. "Arwen," she began, voice trembling, "I must tell you something. I wasn't only your mother's student, I was her failsafe. If you ever returned, if the root ever awakened, I was meant to guide you, yes. But also," she swallowed hard, "to test your intentions." My jaw clenched. "Test me." Her eyes glistened. "Your mother feared not just conquered, but you. The double-sided inherits a power that can destroy memory itself. If twisted, even truth dies." The root tightened inside my chest, like a hand gripping my ribs. "So what are you saying?" I whispered. "That I need to know you won't become what they are. That the root won't consume you." Before I could respond, torches flared behind her. A squad of conquered guards marched toward us, led by Haldren's steward. Nayla grabbed my wrist. "This way." We sprinted, feet pounding through mud, but the guards fanned out, herding us toward the cliff's edge. This wasn't an arrest. It was a trap. Wind howled around us, the cliff dropping into a black maw below. The guards advanced in a crescent, boots crunching gravel, spears leveled at our hearts. Haldren's steward raised a hand. "The magistrate requests the girl alive. The root requires a living vessel." "And Nayla?" I asked. A cruel smile. "Collateral." Nayla squeezed my hand. "If they take you, the binding rite becomes law." She looked at me, really looked, and I saw no hesitation in her eyes, only resolve. "Arwen, jump." "What?" "They won't follow, and the tide's high tonight. The cavern beneath will carry you." I shook my head violently. "You'll die." But she was already stepping backward toward the precipice. "Your mother saved me once. Let me return it." The guard surged. Nayla shoved me with all her strength. The world tilted, sky and stone ripping apart. I plunged through cold air, wind slicing my scream into ribbons. The root flared, wrapping my body in a strange warmth. Then, impact, but not on rock. Water swallowed me whole. The waves seized me, dragging me into an undercurrent that pulsed with something ancient. My vision blurred, my limbs numbed. Above faintly, I heard a shout. Haldren's voice. Find her body. The root can survive a broken host. But I wasn't broken. The undercurrent wasn't killing me. It was carrying me. Deeper. Downward. Toward something waiting. I sank through ink-black water, lungs burning as I fought the current. But then the water warmed, softened. A gentle force enveloped me, guiding rather than dragging. Light bloomed beneath the surface, a soft blue glow threading through a submerged archway carved into the cliffside. A gate. One the town had forgotten, or deliberately buried. My body drifted through it effortlessly, as though the sea itself had granted passage. Inside, the water grew still. I surfaced into a cavern lit by bioluminescent moss and silver-veined stone. But what stole my breath was the mural on the wall, an ancient painting of a woman with a crown of roots, her eyes glowing with the same silver as the vault. My mother. No, not her, a predecessor. A veil-bearer. The root pulsed inside me in recognition. I climbed onto the stone platform. On a pedestal lay another artifact, a crystalline shard shaped like a tear. When I touched it, a voice echoed through the chamber, not my mother's, but dozens layered together. The air has suffered, the air has seen, now the air must choose. A vision slammed into me, Bramfall in flames, Bramfall kneeling, Bramfall freed, Bramfall drowned. Dozens of futures split around me, each shaped by my will. My breath shook. I wasn't here to simply expose the truth. I was here to decide Bramfall's fate. And dawn, the hour of the binding rite, was approaching fast. The vision of splintered futures faded, leaving me gasping on the cold stone. The crystalline shard dimmed in my hand, but its meaning lingered sharp as a blade. The root wasn't simply showing me possibilities, it was demanding intention. Bramfall's fate hinged entirely on what I decided to become. A destroyer, a liberator, a judge, a ghost. My hands trembled. I thought of Nayla's sacrifice, of the mothers and children whose memories had been stolen, of my mother kneeling not out of guilt but coercion. Rage burned hot and bright, but something else cut beneath it. Clarity. Revenge wasn't about raising Bramfall. It was about making the truth impossible to bury again. The cavern trembled, as if approving the thought. I climbed toward a narrow tunnel that ascended back toward daylight. As I moved, water dripped from my clothes and hair, each drop echoing like a countdown. Dawn was close, and dawn meant the binding rite. When I finally emerged onto a secluded inlet behind the town, the sky was bleeding with early light. Bells tolled in the distance, low, ceremonial, suffocating. They were gathering. They believed I was dead. Good. Let them raise their stage. Let them prepare their gilded lies. Let every member of the conquered stand proudly before the people. I would walk onto their ritual ground alive. And every truth they'd buried would rise with me. I moved through the morning fog, hood low, feet silent. Bramfall's square overflowed with bodies, villagers, merchants, clergy, all summoned with promises of justice. A raised dais stood at the center, decorated with silver sigils and a stone altar that thrummed with stolen memory. Haldren paced before it like a priest preparing to sacrifice faith itself. Miriath Cowell stood at his side, bandaged but smiling, her earlier humiliation hidden beneath powder and pride. A herald shouted, "We commence the binding rite, bring forth the vessel." 2 guards dragged a young orphan onto the stage, a girl no older than 10. My pulse snapped. She trembled violently, eyes glassy from fear and sedatives. This was the vessel they intended to shove the root into. My blood turned to ice. They were repeating the same crime they committed with my mother, forcing someone powerless to bear a burden they could neither refuse nor survive. Haldren raised the memory-binding blade. By Bramfall's decree, we cleanse the stolen power. Stolen, I stepped forward. My voice cracked through the square like lightning. The crowd turned. Haldren's face whitened. The blade froze midair. I removed my hood. Gasps rippled outward, a wave of disbelief crashing into panic. It can't be. She died. The root, she has it. I walked through the crowd, each step deliberate. No, I said, I didn't die. I stepped onto the dais. You did. Haldren stumbled backward, clutching the blade as though it might shield him from truth. Seize her, he snapped. But the guards hesitated. Their eyes were fixed on the faint silver glow pulsing beneath my skin. The root's presence pressed outward, filling the square with something ancient and watchful. I lifted the crystalline shard from the cavern. It vibrated gently, responding to the proximity of the altar. Let them see, I whispered. The shard flared, projecting a vision into the air, clear as dawn. The crowd watched, spellbound, as my mother appeared in the conjured memory. Dragged before the conquered, forced to sign a fabricated confession, threatened with my death should she refuse. Miriath shrieked, "Stop this, it's forged." I turned to her. You salted the ledger, but you forgot the root record's memory at the source. The vision continued. Haldren's hand at my mother's throat, the secret vote to sacrifice her, the rite that would erase me if she resisted. A woman in the crowd collapsed to her knees. Gods, what have we followed? Others began shouting, some in denial, many in horror. Haldren lunged at me, but the root surged, knocking him backward with a pulse of raw resonance. He hit the ground hard, gasping. The 10-year-old girl whimpered on the altar. I approached her gently. You're safe now. Then I looked at the conquered. No one hides behind stolen memories again. Haldren rose, trembling with rage. This is your rebellion. I smiled. No, this is your reckoning. Haldren roared, charging with the blade raised high. But before the steel could reach me, the air split with a sound like a buried drum finally breaking free. My root spoke. Not in words, not in thoughts. In truth. A wave of silver force rippled outward from my body, sweeping across the square. Every lie the conquered had woven cracked under its weight. Citizens staggered as flashes of stolen memories returned. Children they'd forgotten, promises erased, grief severed from their hearts. A fisherman dropped to his knees. My wife, you made me forget her funeral. A merchant sobbed violently. My son wasn't sick, you took him. Accusations swelled, turning the square into a tempest of awakening. The conquered panicked, clutching their heads as their own crimes poured back into them, the weight of every deceit crushing their composure. Miriath shrieked and ran. Haldren tried to swing again, but his arm shook with the backlash of unspooled memory. You've doomed Bramfall, he spat. Truth breaks nations. No, I said quietly. Truth rebuilds them. The root pulsed once more, and Haldren staggered, collapsing onto the dais, choking on the flood of his own sins. The people watched, breathless. The binding right altar cracked down the center, light exploding outward. And then, a shadow stepped from behind the altar. Someone I thought dead. Someone who shouldn't have survived the cliff. Arwen, a familiar voice whispered. I turned. My heart stopped. Nayla stood there. Alive. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the impossible shape, standing behind the shattered altar. Nayla. Dripping with seawater, shivering, bruised, but alive. How, I breathed. She offered a faint grin. Turns out the tide loves rebels. Then her expression hardened. The conquered spread word that you'd drowned. They wanted the town to believe the right must continue without interruption. Her gaze swept the chaotic square where citizens cried out with returned memories. Conquered members crumpled under their own guilt. Haldren gasped beside the altar, and Miriath fled like a shadow running from dawn. You did this, Nayla whispered. Your mother hoped you would, but feared what it might cost you. I felt the root pulse, as though acknowledging her. Haldren staggered upright, pointing a trembling hand at Nayla. You betrayed the right. No, she said calmly, you betrayed the town. The crowd turned on him again, shouts rising like a storm tide. Haldren's face paled as he realized the crowd was no longer his audience, but his jury. He lunged toward Nayla instead of me. The root surged within me, and for the first time, its voice carried words. Protect what remains honest. My hand lifted instinctively. A pulse of silver light exploded across the dais. Haldren hit the ground, motionless, and silence fell. The moment Haldren fell, Miriath's scream pierced the square. This is manipulation. Do not believe what she shows you, the root is corrupt. Desperation clung to her voice. She stumbled onto the dais, eyes wild, bracelets rattling. Her gaze darted across the fractured altar, then to the crystalline shard in my hand. The root distorts memory. It can twist truths to her advantage. Nayla stepped forward. The root doesn't bend memory. It reveals the parts you buried. Citizens surged closer, anger sharpening into clarity. A butcher stepped forward, jaw trembling. You made us forget the plague you caused. Another shouted, you rewrote our children's names. A woman cried, you erased my sister. Miriath lifted her hands defensively. We did it to protect Bramfall. No, I said softly. You did it to protect your throne of lies. I extended the shard. It glowed brighter, reacting to her presence. The root whispered through me, unmask her. The shard cast another memory into the air. Not of my mother this time, but of Miriath herself, whispering into Haldren's ear the night before my mother's execution. Kill her quietly. Make the girl forget. The root will come for the one who fears it least. A tremor shook the crowd. Miriath went rigid. The town gasped as one. She tried to run, but Bramfall rose against her. Citizens swarmed toward Miriath, but I raised my hand, stopping them with a pulse of the root's resonance. No, I said, we do not become what they were. Miriath shook violently, mascara streaking down her cheeks. You don't understand. If the root continues to awaken, it will open every sealed memory. Things you won't want to see, things better left buried. The root stirred, agreeing but not with her fear, rather with truth. Memory isn't meant to be comfortable, I told her, only honest. Miriath fell to her knees. What will you do to me? The crowd waited. Nayla, bloodied but steady, whispered, the root can restore what she erased, force her to face what she took. I stepped closer until our shadows merged. You will not be killed. You will not be tortured. Hope flickered in her eyes. Then I finished. You will remember. I pressed 2 fingers to her forehead. The root flowed out of me like a tide of silver heat pouring into her. Her eyes rolled back as decades of stolen memories crashed into her mind. Every life she altered, every name she erased, every truth she buried. When it ended, Miriath collapsed, not dead, but hollowed by her own deeds and finally returned. The people watched, silent. This was justice, not death. Revelation. After the rite dissolved and the conquered fell into custody, the town gathered in the square, exhausted, shaken, awake. Murals of false history were torn down. Lost names were spoken again. The fog of forgetfulness lifted like smoke after a long-burning fire. Nayla stood beside me, leaning slightly from her injuries. Your mother would be proud. I swallowed hard. I wish she could see it. She sees more now than she ever could in life, Nayla murmured. Veilbearers don't vanish, they echo. I walked toward the broken altar, root pulsing faintly. My mother's scroll rested beside it. When I touched it again, warmth radiated through my palms and another message revealed itself beneath the first, hidden until now. Irwin, revenge is not the goal. The truth is, let the root reveal what must be known, not what satisfies your anger. A tear slid down my cheek. She had known I would walk this path. She had trusted me not to lose myself in fury. Will the root stay with you permanently? Nayla asked. I exhaled slowly. It doesn't stay, it bonds, it grows, and it guides. From the crowd, a small girl approached, the orphan they almost made the vessel. She tugged my cloak shyly. "Miss, is the town safe now?" I knelt to her level. "It will be," I said, "because now everyone remembers." And then the ground trembled softly. A warning. A reminder. Justice wasn't finished. Yet. Night returned quietly, settling over a bramfall transformed. Fires were lit in the square, not of rage, but of rebuilding. People gathered to recount memories they once believed lost. But I couldn't rest. The root pushed gently against my ribs, urging me toward the cliffs, toward the place where everything began. Nayla followed. "Where are you going?" "To bury nothing," I said. We climbed to the ridge overlooking the sea. The wind tugged at my cloak, salt stinging my eyes. There, beneath the luminous moon, lay my mother's unmarked grave. I knelt. No fear. No trembling. Only the truth. "Mother," I whispered, "your secret isn't buried anymore, and neither am I." The root pulsed warmly, as if in answer. Blades of silver light threaded through the soil, forming a symbol, the veil-bearer's mark, glowing softly against the earth. Nayla gasped. "Arwen, it's choosing you publicly." A cold calm settled over me. "No, it's choosing Bramfall. I'm just the vessel that survived." The wind shifted, carrying my mother's faint echo. "Rise, daughter, remember in silence, rule in truth." I stood. The town lay below like a story waiting for its new author. Not a queen. Not a tyrant. Not a martyr. A veil-bearer. My revenge was complete. But my work had just begun. Bramfall lives in fragile peace now. Memory is no longer stolen. Truth is no longer buried. Some nights the root whispers futures I haven't yet walked. Some nights it simply hums, a reminder that power is responsibility, not revenge. But every dawn, I return to the cliffs. To listen, to learn, to guard what my mother died to protect. They tried to bury her secret. Instead, they raised her heir. If this story moved you, leave a like and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Your support means the world to this storyteller.